Most people think politics is about what you believe. It's not. Most people think politics is about who you are, but more precisely, it's about which identity gets to be invisible. And that asymmetry might be the difference between a politics that preserves human dignity and one that destroys it. Identity-based organizing isn't the problem. In sociological terms, it's often the foundation of political mobilization. A woman joins a feminist movement because she's a woman. A worker joins a labor movement because of economic precarity. An immigrant organizes with other immigrants for dignity and rights. These aren't tribal indulgences. In social science, we call this consciousness raising, acts of strategic visibility. When you're invisible to power, naming your identity is restoring it. It's saying, I'm here, I count, you have to negotiate with me. That's a claim to dignity. So when someone says identity politics is bad, they often mean your visibility is inconvenient to me.
But here's where it gets complicated. Identity-based organizing becomes tribal when it treats group affiliation as higher than universal principle. When it says, defend our group, regardless of whether our group is right. And that can happen in any movement, marginalized or dominant. But something else is happening in dominant groups, something structural, and it's much harder to see. When a marginalized group organizes around identity, it's highly visible. Everyone sees it. There's a clear group. There's a boundary. There's explicit solidarity. You can hold it accountable because you can see it. But when a dominant group organizes around identity, something structurally different happens. The identity becomes the baseline standard. The default becomes invisible, and the invisible gets renamed. Sociologists call this unmarked dominance. It's not white identity politics, it's Western values. It's not male dominance in labor markets, it's merit. It's not wealthy class interests, it's economic efficiency. The social affiliation hides inside what looks like an objective principle. Here's the trap. A marginalized group organizing around identity is called tribal. The same structural organizing by a dominant group is called universal. The difference isn't in the structure, it's in the visibility. And visibility creates accountability. You can see tribal claims in the marginalized group and judge them. But you can't see tribal claims in the dominant group because they're mislabeled as neutral principles. Which means the dominant group's affiliation goes completely unaudited. This isn't about malice. It's about how power makes certain things invisible. When your identity is normal, when it's the cultural baseline, you don't experience it as an identity. You experience it as just how things are. A native English speaker doesn't think about language access. A person without a disability doesn't think about accessibility. A citizen doesn't think about citizenship as an identity. They think about those things only when they're threatened, when someone else is claiming their visibility. This is structural, not personal. But, and this is important, structure is not destiny. Invisibility is the default condition for dominant identities. But visibility is a choice, a difficult choice, but still a choice. So what does it look like to audit an affiliation? A labor union organizes around worker identity. That's visible. So someone can ask, do the leadership decisions serve workers across the organization, or just senior workers? Are you defending the principle of worker dignity, or just the interests of your in-group? The union can be held accountable because the identity organizing is visible. Now look at a professional elite organizing around credentialism. That too functions as an identity. But professional credentialism is invisible. It looks like standards and expertise.
So nobody asks, does this credentialing system serve the stated principle of ensuring competence? Or does it primarily serve the economic interests of existing credentialed people? The principal claim goes unaudited because the identity interest is hidden. This is the asymmetry. Visibility doesn't guarantee a group is serving principle, but invisibility guarantees it won't be audited. And politics needs auditability. It needs groups willing to answer, are we serving this principle universally? Or are we serving this principle selectively, serving our people and neglecting others? There are two ways dominant groups practice hidden identity politics. The first is invisibility. A wealthy person advocating against wealth taxes doesn't experience this as wealthy people organizing. They experience it as protecting innovation. The identity interest is hidden, so the principal claim goes unaudited. The second is strategic equivalence.
Some dominant groups do name their identity explicitly. Nationalists, men's rights movements, openly wealthy interest lobbies. But they claim that their identity interest is a universal principle. Our identity is universal truth. In this case, the identity is visible, but the claim to universality is the problem, and it also goes unaudited. Because once you claim your identity interest is universal principle, it can't be questioned. Either someone agrees, or they're attacking your group. There's no space for scrutiny. Both forms prevent the group from being asked, are we actually serving principle, or are we serving our own interests? That question is what makes accountability possible. But some people, in all groups, dominant and marginalized, refuse this arrangement. They reverse the hierarchy. Values first, affiliation second. This means I have principles: democracy, dignity, justice, freedom from violence, and I will align with any group advancing those principles, even groups I don't identify with. And I will abandon any group the moment it stops serving those principles, including my people, especially my people. Because principle is supposed to be universal. For someone in a marginalized group, this is hard. You're cutting yourself off from the solidarity that protected you. For someone in a dominant group, this is harder, because it means actively seeing your own affiliation. That takes deliberate choice. Structural forces push the opposite direction, but deliberate choice is possible. This is what integrity looks like. So here's the test for any political movement. First, can you articulate your actual interests clearly? Not your principles, your interests. If the answer is everyone benefits, you're probably hiding something. The question is whether you're honest about that. Second, can your principal claims be audited? If someone outside your coalition asks, "Are you applying these principles universally?" Can you point to specific evidence? Or do you only apply them to protect your people? Third, are you willing to be inconsistent? If you genuinely discover that your affiliation contradicts your principle, are you willing to abandon the affiliation, even when it costs? And this is the hard part for dominant groups. Fourth, can you see your own identity organizing? When it's invisible because it's normal, can you ask yourself, what in my environment gets labeled principle simply because my group benefits from it? If you can't answer that question, you're not practicing principle-driven politics. You're practicing invisible identity politics, and you're not being held accountable for it. This distinction, visible versus invisible, auditable versus unauditable, is where human dignity either gets protected or violated. Dignity requires the ability to be seen. When marginalized groups organize around identity, they're demanding visibility. We exist. We have interests. That's dignity work. But when dominant groups hide their identity interests inside principle claims, they create what philosophers call epistemic injustice. They deny others the tools to see or name what's happening. You can't resist what you're not allowed to name. If someone says, "We're operating on merit," and merit is shaped by invisible identity advantage, then the marginalized group faces silencing. They can't articulate what's wrong. They just experience injustice without a shared framework to understand it. That's a dignity violation. It's silencing. And a political system built on silencing cannot respect human dignity, by definition. So where does this leave us? Not with a simple rule, but with a clearer question. Are you practicing politics that can be audited? Or are you hiding your interests inside universal claims? For marginalized groups, the visibility is yours. That's a feature, not a flaw. The danger is becoming tribal, closing yourself off from universal principle. For dominant groups, the invisibility is structural. It's the default around you, but that doesn't excuse it. The test: are you willing to see your own affiliation, even when it contradicts your principal claims? Especially then? Structural forces make this choice harder or easier, but choice is still there. And dignity, actual dignity, not just dignity for your people, depends on how you answer it, not on whether you practice identity politics. Everyone does. On whether you're willing to let your identity politics be visible and auditable. Because a political system where some groups' interests are visible and accountable, and others are invisible and unauditable, is not practicing principle. It's practicing power. And power that knows itself can at least be negotiated with. Power that doesn't see itself can't.